Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. This is a video about the dome of a particular type, which I don't think I'd ever want to build. However, in my accumulation of photos, I found this particular one, and it had the grid-like structure that I was after. Now, I didn't give it a lot of analytical focus, to look at it, but I just knew that it was similar to, but it was in my mind just a higher frequency dome, but it was similar to the dome that I wanted to make, the low-ish pitch to the roof, the swooping roof, and the low swooping entrance. I did note, however, that this version, when we look at it, has squares moving down the dome, not pentagons or hexagons. You have a square at the top, as is the style of dome that I want to build, but it doesn't create a pentagon or a hexagon, as I just mentioned. I actually overlooked that until just recently when I was doing some of the other video about creating the domes of different types. And this one came back to mind. I thought, hang on a minute. How can this one have the grid-like base, the structure, so this is a bird's eye view of it, looking directly down on it, but have the square sections in plan view? Now, I know that I'm not making myself clear there, but these are rectangles that are on an angle, but as viewed from the top, they are square, because obviously these are the rectangles I'm talking about here, because they're on a slope. So I thought to myself, I think I have to try and build this. And I did. And I came up with a couple of observations, and I'm going to indicate these two triangles here for reference later on. So what do we have here? Actually, we have grid-like bases. Grid here, definitely a grid over here as well, and sort of a grid here. This was my initial attempt at making the dome. So all I had done in my logic was, if I have a square at the top, let's rotate it down until it touches one side to the other, and carry on down to the ground and make a dome. Well, no, apparently. I did the cross, as you can see there, cross, and then simply filled it in. But this does not look anything, from a plan view, does not look anything like the photo I was referencing at the beginning. So I realised, hang on, they're not squares that are rotated down, they are simply, as I mentioned, squares in plan view only. That resulted in me making the scaffold, or using the approach that I've been mentioning in other video, but making the scaffold such that I can create the dome in this manner. And I did. So this is, actually, I'll go out of, I knew there was something wrong when I was moving it around. So this is what happens here. You wind up being able to directly draw the rectangles that are shown in this photo, and then you have to carry on developing up the panels, the triangles, to infill this area here, and we wind up with this. And this is a model of this photo. I have coloured, just for simple visual effect or ability to see them, the different squares or the rectangles, because this rectangle here is much longer, of course, in this dimension than the square is here. So, and you can see that when we look at it like that, quite a bit longer. Not a particularly not a dome that I'd want to make, but I was intrigued because I thought, well, anything that you can do to standardize the different panels or make multiples of one panel to go around the dome, it might be a good thing. But it has too gentle a swooping arc, and the pressures put on the joints and the struts because of that flatness would be quite extreme, and you'd have to have strong hub and strut type connections or very strong system for connecting the panels together. So I thought to myself, excuse the phone trying to talk to me, but I thought to myself, well, what happened if I make a lower frequency dome? The previous one was based on 5 divisions. This one was based on 4. Surely that would give it a flatter, or sorry, a less flat and more desirable shape. Well, not really. It is too peaky, and the very thing I didn't want. So I could have done something wrong. I may have made a mistake. It went from very flat to very peaky, and I'm not too sure why that is, but at this stage I'm not going to chase it down. As part of the testing, I put my much favoured transparent dome over it, and you can just see the points here poking through the dome. Now that comes down to the fact that I've created this particular sphere out of quite coarse segments, and the fidelity of the dome isn't as great. But were I to make a more smooth dome via using tinier segments, I think they would have gone away or been reduced. So we would have been looking something more like these points. That's not important. I know it's a dome until, remember right at the beginning I was mentioning these two triangles. They're actually concave, not convex, as we can probably see there, which is odd considering this is a dome, but domes don't always have to be truly spherical. Yes, you can divide the triangle, this area, these two triangles, instead of vertically like this, you can go horizontally. However, as soon as you do that, you lose the grid-like, the square-like shape when you're looking at it in plan view. So this is the true representation of the dome. So that's a little bit of a, well, oddity. The desire, but actually when you create that line through there and remove this one, you start to make go back to the hexagon type shapes, and it becomes more domey, more smooth. It doesn't have that hollow area there. Not unattractive in itself if that's what you like, but it's interesting dome. As I said, I was most intrigued that I'd been watching or looking at the different photos and not fully understanding that they didn't go along with the particular dome I wanted to look. In fact, there was one that was in the same series from the same site that probably should have given me a wee bit of a hint. And actually, I might just go find that and drag it in and show you so you know what I'm talking about. So just wait a moment. And this is it here, where this is an octadome, or based on the octa shape apparently, but it didn't have what I was looking for, whereas this one did. It had the divisions that I was wanting. This is based on the octahedron or whatever it was called, I don't know. But the square at the top can be divided through the 4 compass points and is more smooth in its shape. But this was what I was looking for, and I'd actually, in my mind, sorry for any noise interruption, I was just banging the mic there in my enthusiasm, but that was what I was after effectively. So I'll just draw in another photo, and this is what I was working on a lot, and this was more like the Paul Robinson dome, where you've got the legginess in the opening and a higher the ratio for that openness there and the height is higher, but still it didn't have the divisions through these areas here that I was after. This is actually probably a nicer shape except for this, but it was getting close to the look that I wanted. Equally, if I just bring in another one, this was closer still, well, kind of closer still, but this tells me, these 2 photos tell me that they were created via a particular type or version, and one is not the same as the other. And you note that the line of the struts there have kind of like got a dog leg type look, where this is more of a swooping curve. And of course the top square is much different in proportion, so it's telling me something. And I determined what it was. I can't recall off the top of my head right now, but that was the result. All of this is saying that there are many ways to go about finding your dome. Now, if we have a look at this dome here, and this particular dome is actually a really nice dome, but it is more likely that it was built off of this type of look. It's got the legginess in the leg, as it were, much higher. This is actually quite a nice look. I actually do like that one, and that's again closer to the Paul Robinson one when you see it in different photos. This one here is a pentagon based one, but it too has the legginess and the bigger opening height. Works fine. It simply wasn't what I was after. So, and that's basically what I've been saying all along. While yes, it's a nice enough shape, unless it's what you're after, well, no. Now I bring in this photo. This is more what I'm talking about. It's a lower swoop to the opening, and the height is much lower compared to that as well. You can see the size that you can go to, and my paranoia about this joint is obviously just that, paranoia, because these are big domes and they wouldn't be able to function unless they had their strength that would be required in this area. I come up to this photo, same, this is what I'm after for me, and this is the company I've been mentioning there, and if that's the way you pronounce it, Altbar, this is the company that I've been mentioning, and it too has a very nice pleasing shape, very flat in this area, but what they use, their timbers in this particular dome, I'm going to suggest they are probably at least 6 to 8 inches deep, from 150 to 200. I'm more suggesting 200, and they may well be 3 inches or 75 mil in width. But the important feature is they've got solid metal hubs, these hubs here, and they've got it's approximately a 320 millimeter how would you say, pipe or shaft that is embedded into the, two of them in fact, that is embedded into the timber. It's got ribs on it, and it's epoxied, a 3-part component adhesive, and internal on that metal pipe or tube is the metal threads that the bolts go into. So this is a very strong fixing system. So, and is probably the best example of this type of dome. Now I'm just banging off a few things to. This is another example. You can see the hubs there, and it's bolted through into the legs. Very nice it is, I've got to say. This one is quite a good sized dome, as you can witness by the people underneath it. Again, much more swoopy. Same hub assembly here, or type there, whereas you get something like, where is it? Something like this, where again you're back to using, whoops, now better move that. You've got the opening here that is too high for what I'm wanting, you know, the aesthetics that I find pleasing for my eye. This one here, similar, that the opening is much more swoopy and the overall head height much lower. I think this is actually a much nicer look. This is the example of the leggy version of things. Bit different because it's actually taken or made use of the fact that it can be divided through the centre, but the opening, in another photo which I can't just lay my hands on right at the moment, but it shows you the legginess of the leg. It's obvious. So yeah, that's where we're going with that. It's whatever you like, you make to suit yourself. And for me, I like this style. That suits my sense of my aesthetic requirement. This one here, very nice. This one, very nice. This one, for me, no. For this one, I think that's really nice, but no. Okay, so that's it. I was trying to find another another photo which was shot on the beach, and let's just have a quick look, and then I'll sign off and let you get your life back again, as I've been saying a few times. No, I can't find it. No, not to worry. That's what I'm after. Onwards and upwards. We don't have to worry about this shape any further. I did the drawing exercise, understood how it was created, or how you could create it, and now I can put it to bed and go on with my exploration of my dome. Rightio, I'll let you alone now. Bye.